And I'll take my answer off air, but I was wondering how that plays into effect with this possible swine virus.
Sure thing. Who wants that? Which one?
Well, I know the anthrax shots got suspended, 5 years ago because they hurt so many people and killed so many others. And they told the troops they had to take it, but it was actually an experimental vaccine. And so they can make troops, because they waived their rights going into the military, they can make troops take approved vaccines. They cannot make them take experimental vaccines. And they tried to make the troops and first responders in the U.S. take the smallpox shots, but George led the charge on fighting that back in 2003. And so the vast majority refused to take it, and some did and died from it. So I'm glad that you've had, no ill effects from it, if I heard you correctly. But just throwing this in because it's important in the whole discussion, and we can go to another caller, get Steve's take on that, is that this is nothing new for governments to launch biological attacks or for these systems to be used to undermine nations, to implode nations. If you go to the Encyclopedia Britannica, you can read about use of biological weapons in the ancient world. The first use was 1500 BC, or we're talking 3,500 years ago, by the Hittite text. And then, of course, there's Homer's Iliad during the Trojan War, where they poison water supplies of their enemies with biological weapons. In the medieval period, we have the Mongol Empire catapulting plague-ridden bodies over Chinese walls, over the Great Wall of China. And then we have official British manuals used in the 1700s all over the world about how if you've got your troops sick with smallpox or something else, you want to wipe out some Indians, make sure that your men who are sick, you take those blankets from your infirmaries and give those to the natives. And so I'm reading that from the encyclopedia.
How come either one of you haven't jumped on the Fort Detrick situation, 2 missing vials?
Well, I think that's and it was 3 missing vials. I think that what's interesting is that we have 21 polo ponies dying of equine encephalitis and no linkage.
Well, pharmacy said they may have put something in the feed.
And by the way, remember last year the Australian government...
George.
Hold on.
Go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead, Steve.
Oh, I'm just saying that's a Kool-Aid statement. Can you imagine that if these people are going to depopulate the earth, that, except for them, of course, can you imagine that if we're going to go into let's say, revert 300-400 years, obviously, if you can control the horses, we're talking about people that have thought this out. It's just like when I broke the story on chronic wasting disease and the whole development of mad cow disease. I said this is going to be released. We know the story. It was released in Britain. So what's going on right now is it's beta testing of everything they plan to do, and if it doesn't go lethal at this point, it doesn't mean it won't go lethal at a later point.
Yeah, they're testing the spread of it, and go back to 2001, and then again last year. The British government admitted, we accidentally released foot and mouth from our Portendown bioweapons lab, and that goes back to the murder of Dr. David Quayle, which, now there's eyewitnesses to them dumping his body, the head of Portendown bioweapons lab. And then they just calmly announce in the back of the paper like it's no big deal, oh, by the way, we released the foot and mouth. And then the government admits they released from a lab another horse flu last year in Australia. So, again, there's just thousands of examples of this.
Next up, we shall go to Albuquerque, New Mexico. Lorenzo, take it away.
Hi, George. How you doing?
Good.
Alex, Ian, nice to talk to you guys.
Welcome.
I was just wondering, is there anything that we can do, just as a general population to help point the finger and blow the whistle on some of these groups? I mean, maybe not to stop them, but to inform others, Or do we just sit there and, kiss our you-know-whats goodbye?
You can't blow the whistle. You got to have a whistleblower, don't you think, Stephen?
Yeah, I think that the question's a good one, though, and that's why I'm saying I'm calling all veterans. George, I have a special place in my heart for veterans.
I know you do.
Obviously, the thing is I try and help them physically. No veteran will ever buy my book because I give it to them saying thank you for your service to the country. But here's one thing. As veterans, they can bind together and they can demand, literally, not only the retraction, not only a half-ass apology, but they can demand the replacement. Now, I don't believe Janet Napolitano came up with that that on her own, because that came technically out of the FBI Fusion Hive, and it was, I think, a 231-page report. When Alex broke the Mayak report, there was so much feedback and furor over it that the governor basically saw his political posterior in hot water and did something about it. The thing is that these people push and push and push and see what the tolerance level is. And good night, ladies and gentlemen, listening to this broadcast tonight. You know, if the congressmen and senators get 100 letters, it's no big deal. 1,000, no big deal. 10,000, maybe it's a deal. But by the time the fury of the veterans, and I can say this, George, that nothing broke my heart and made me angrier at the same time, nothing, than when she put the fingers, because I was on your show 5 years ago talking about all the Vietnam vets that were dying, and I said they were not dying of suicide, they were being suicided.
And by the way, think of the arrogance of the state police. Two separate officers send me the Mayak report, basically a state version of the other federal report that I believe we broke as well. Other big media got it, and the media says they broke it, but
you broke it first, Alex.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not just the Mayak, the new one that came out just a few weeks ago, the actual federal report. If you read that report, it was issued in 2007 and then expanded April 7th and released with all the stuff about veterans and the gun owners buying guns being terrorists and, you know, buying ammo. It says they are the #1 terror threat. I mean, this is an absolute high treason. Napolitano came out and gave a press conference a week into the scandal and said, look, we had, this is in mainstream news, you can read it, she said, we had a debate about releasing that, and I said, go ahead and release it. So even though they already knew that the state version that came out in Virginia and Missouri of what we got, even Ron Paul bumper stickers, Bob Barr, libertarians, you know, you're all basically terrorists, people that don't like the Federal Reserve that's private, people that want to end the Fed. Imagine, even though all of that was out and the heat was out, she just goes ahead and says, put this sucker out. And so remember that, police and military and all the rest of you out there, you're serving a system that after you're done violating the Bill of Rights and Constitution to carry out their program, they know, just like with Hitler, Stalin, Mao, Pol Pot, Fidel Castro, when they're done with their hot revolution, when they've used you to cull the people and to carry out their program of tyranny, the first people they're coming after in their Night of the Long Knives, right after Hitler got elected, he didn't go after the Jews at first. He didn't go after the gypsies first. He went after his own enforcers, the SA first. Police and military, Google Night of the Long Knives.
Bonners Ferry, Idaho. Carrie, it's your turn. Hi.
I am a victim of the Vietnam War, even though I wasn't a service member. I was 15 years old. It was Christmas Eve, and a lady I babysat for had hepatitis. I was taken to the doctor and, trusting the doctor, given a shot of gabapentin that was supposed to prevent me from getting sick. I never turned yellow. However, since then, I've never been well. I have flu-like symptoms almost every single day of my life. 1967 was 40-plus years ago. And now they tell me that I have a real rare genotype for being in the USA. And somebody paid for me to fly from Idaho to Florida so that they could harvest my virus. They paid me my airfare. They put me up in a motel.
And you don't know who did it?
I don't know. It was done through a brokerage firm called BioCollections.
Yeah, don't think for a minute that they didn't know back on March 18th when they admit they found this exactly what it was, and they've left our borders wide open.
Well, this particular thing, this hepatitis C, it only can be spread by getting blood donations or people on the street that are using IV drugs. And so, you know, I don't fit that category, but I did receive this virus, and a doctor, a learned doctor, told me that, well, it's right there in your medical records, right there, because in April, 4 months later, I was scooped up off the hallway at school because of the right upper quadrant pain. They ordered gallbladder tests because the liver was so inflamed. But yet I never turned yellow, and they didn't have a test for this until 93.
Amazing you're still alive. It truly is. Next up, let's go to Toronto, Canada. Terry on the international line. Hi, Terry.
Morning, George.
Good morning.
Sorry, but with this Mexican flu situation, I've never heard such bunk in my entire life. Now, my understanding about influenza is that traditionally in the world, it moves west to east. The vaccines that we get before the flu season are based on the best guess they have on what type of strain is going to be hitting North America.
It moves east to west.
Okay. Either way, we have an idea of which version of it is coming. Now,
hold on, Alex. Let him talk.
Okay. So now, if the doctors, the medical community, really thought that this was a major deal in the works, they would be approaching it the same way that they approached it with SARS. With SARS, the medical associations, particularly in the northern states and in Canada, got together and they had contingency plans to turn places like ice rinks, hockey rinks,